Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to the Adulting 101 Academy. This is the place where we come together to learn about what it means to be an adult. Even though it may not be the most enjoyable thing we have to do, it's still something that we've got to do. So I'm your host, Josh. And guys, before we get going into this, I want to say thank you to everybody who's started following, started watching the videos. I'm really here just creating these things, hoping to help individuals in a wide variety of topics. Now, so far, we've already done resumes, we've talked about preparing for natural disasters, and then today we're actually going to be talking about cover letters. Now, to give you guys a quick little background, I have a master's in business, and then I've worked as a hiring manager, and I've actually worked as a director of career development at a local college where I live. So I have experience in this. I've been able to work with HR professionals in a lot of different areas. I've ran job fairs, taught workshops on this. So this is something that I have had a lot of experience with, both as a professional and as an educator. And hopefully this information will help you out. Like I said earlier, we've already done a resume video that you can go check out. It has information for you to do that. And then I'm actually preparing another video that's going to be focused on interviews as well. So if you're looking for information on how to get a job, what you need to do, preparing wise, this is the place to come, get some information and get going on things. But let's start right off the bat. Once again, this is about creating a cover letter. Now, this is important. This is one of the very first steps that you've got to do when you're looking for a job. Having your resume is key. Applying for jobs, obviously, you can't get a job if you don't apply, but the cover letter really is a important key factor in how you get through the first steps in the process. So, one of the first things I want everybody to realize is your cover letter is your first impression with the employer that you're applying for. Yes, you can have your resume, yes, you can have your application, but really it is the cover letter that most people will look at first. And they'll go through it and they may not read the whole thing word for word. Some do. I always tended to skip and kind of skim through things a little bit, looking for key words, looking for key phrases, that type of idea. But the cover letter, I usually spent a little more time on than the resume early on. Now, once I'm starting to interview candidates, I dig into that resume a lot more. But the cover letter really is what kind of sets the tone for a candidate as I'm looking through that type of stuff. So, once again, this is your first impression. You need to make sure that this letter shares who you are, what you hope to achieve, and really kind of sets your knowledge level for even the business that you're applying for. Now, one of the first things I want to emphasize when you're making a cover letter, use a standard format. Don't make it all fancy. Cover letters really are pretty straight and simple. The fonts you use need to be readable. They need to be very, I want to say standard. Like I said, standard format. So standard fonts, standard size. Don't do colors, red and green and blue. Make it black lettering on a white background. It's the easiest to read. Now, as you're doing your cover letter, I want to emphasize the fact that it is a letter. You are not just creating a list, you are actually writing a letter. So have full sentences, have paragraphs, and don't make the paragraphs humongous. I've seen people where their cover letter was one gigantic paragraph of like 15 to 20 lines. That's too much for one paragraph. Just like if you were writing a report, you wouldn't write one full page as a single paragraph. You would break it up into multiple paragraphs. So for me, when I'm writing cover letters, I usually have four, maybe five paragraphs. The first paragraph is talking about the job that I'm applying for, that type of stuff. The final paragraph is usually me saying, thank you. I'd like to talk further about my qualifications, kind of asking for an interview. And then the middle three kind of talk about one is usually my education, and two are usually my past experience and things like that. So it's kind of my standard format. It's five paragraphs. Once again, it's starts off with the job I'm applying for, two related to my experience, one about my education, and then one focused on saying thank you, essentially. But as you are writing these, once again, that first paragraph needs to talk about the job you're applying for, the position, the title, the company you're applying for. First of all, that shows that you're actually creating a unique cover letter for the job you're applying for. If you just simply say in your first paragraph, "Hi, I'm applying for a job you posted," and that's it, you don't put the job title, you don't put the business you're applying for, then it becomes pretty clear that the cover letter you're writing is just one you're sending to everybody. That it's not unique, it's one generic one that you're writing. So, every cover letter you write needs to be unique. And it doesn't mean you have to change your entire cover letter, but it does mean you want to tailor it and adjust certain things to fit the job you're applying for the most. Because once again, if you're just throwing out generic things everywhere, it gets overlooked really easily. So you want to make sure you stand out in some way or another. And the easiest way right off the bat is to actually have information about the business and the job you're applying for. Now, one of the key things that you can put into your cover letter is how you learned about the position, especially if someone from that business recommended you apply for the job. Now, there are some reasons not to do that. If you are told that, hey, a position's opening, but you can't use my name because the position's not been made public yet, and I would get in trouble, then yeah, you don't want to do that. You don't want to say someone's name. But if a position is posted, and someone who you know says, "Hey, this is a position that's great for you. You would do great at this. You know, put my name down as a reference." You can say in your cover letter, "Hey, I'm applying for this position. I was told about it or I learned about it from so and so who works in your business or works for your company." That is a good way to kind of open the door for you right off the bat because now they can go talk to that person and say, "Hey, this person mentioned that you told them they'd be good for this position. Tell us why." So it gives you an in. It gives you an opportunity to stand out before you've even gotten to the interview. And really, a lot of jobs are who you know, not necessarily what you know. So use that opportunity. But once again, always ask to make sure it's okay to use the person's name and to mention them, whether it be references or in a cover letter. And we'll talk about references actually at the end of this. We're going to go kind of dig into that for a minute or two. But that's a good way of doing it. Now, if you learned about the job through a job search, or if you're going through the company website, that works as well, especially if it's the company website, because then that shows that you took the time to go onto their site, figure out what they had available. It just indicates that you have more interest in that company than just the random company. Which this leads to the next thing. Talk about why you want to work for that company. Why are you interested in that company? If a company has been around for a long time or has a lot of impact in the local community, you can mention that in your cover letter that that's one of the reasons why you want to be a part of that company. And as you're writing the cover letter, you want to focus on their needs, not necessarily what you've done and your accomplishments, but how you fit their needs. And they list those out for you in the job description. If you look at any job posting, it will say, "Need someone who does this and this and this and qualifies for this and does that." Talk about what they listed in your cover letter. So if they say, "Hey, A, B, and C are the three most important things for this job," talk about how you can fulfill A, B, and C for them and provide value to them in this position. So talk about their needs, talk about them. That's where every cover letter can be unique because every job is a little bit different and you can highlight how you match their needs the best. Next thing is always be positive throughout your letter. Do not sit and talk negatively about past managers, past jobs. Everything needs to be positive. And this is something key for interviews as well. You want to be positive. Now, if they ask things like in an interview, this isn't really the topic for today, but in an interview, they talk about your weaknesses, you always want to spin it to be a positive thing. But once again, in a cover letter, don't talk about how your last manager was horrible and you're looking to get out of that situation. Don't do that. Just simply focus on the fact that you are trying to find a new opportunity, a new way to grow, a new way to expand your knowledge and your interests. Be positive in everything you can say. The next thing in a cover letter is I recommend you don't start every paragraph and every sentence with the word I. In fact, I try and tell my students who I've worked with and others is try not to start any of the sentences with the word I. You might have one or two, but really a sentence that starts with "I did this" and you list out what you did can change and become a responsibility I was tasked with. So you're still using the word "I" and still focusing on yourself, but you can change how it sounds. Because if you go, "I did this, I did that, I was given this job, I was given that job, I was given this," it re the repetitiveness doesn't flow well and doesn't sound good. So you do want a cover letter to sound good. You want it to flow nicely. If you don't know how to adjust what you're saying, one recommendation I have is put it into an AI writing program and have it adjust and give you examples. I wouldn't say put your information in and just automatically take whatever the AI kicks out for you because I found that AI is good, but not flawless. I've used it for a number of things to help me when I'm trying to figure out, hey, what's another way of saying this that sounds different? So just change it up a little bit. And it's come with some weird things, but it does give you good ideas. So take what you write initially and use the examples or the suggestions that AI has and you can integrate that into your cover letter. The next thing is you don't want to repeat your resume word for word. Yes, you do want to talk about your skills and your education and your experience, but it shouldn't be my last job was this, I did this. My last job before that was this, and I did that. Once again, you want to talk about more about the needs of the company, and you can talk about your experience in that way. Hey, if a company is looking for someone who has handled money in the past, and you've worked as a cashier, you can talk about your experience as a cashier would meet their needs for money handling, that type of idea. One next things is, always tell them thank you for considering you for the position. You know, a lot of people like to see people who are polite, have manners. It is good to be polite in your letter. That's why I say always be positive because if you're negative and toxic in your cover letter, people are going to assume that you're even more so in real life. So always be positive, be courteous, say thank you. But also make sure that in that end of that cover letter, you're asking for an interview, that you are simply saying, "Hey, I'd like to meet and discuss further about my qualifications for this position." You know, use that opportunity to show them that, hey, I'm not just applying to apply, I'm applying because I want this position. Ask for the opportunity to talk with them. So once again, ask to meet. Say you'd like to come in. Tell them that you are available at a mutual time that works best for both of you. So um, take advantage of that. Really do that. If you don't ask for the interview, don't ask for a chance to meet with them. There are some HR professionals who just won't. They'll assume you don't really want the job and they won't reach out to you, even if you're a candidate they're willing to consider. So always ask. Next thing is on your cover letter, make sure you include your contact information. Your name, obviously, your email address, your phone number. You don't need your address, but phone and email address have to be on there. And they need to be the same phone number and email address that you have on your resume as well. You only want one phone number, one email address across the board, so you don't have to check multiple areas for contact. Do make sure you use a professional closing to, at the end with your signature. Um, I have seen in the past people who have wrote things like hugs and kisses or love so and so. That's not professional. That's not okay. That's not going to help you. In fact, most times that will get you tossed out of a job applicant pool. So you can say things like thank you. Thank you is a very simple one. Sincerely works as well. Best wishes. I've seen that one. That's perfectly fine as well. So something like that. If you're submitting a paper cover letter, you'll want to sign it. If you're submitting it online, through an application, that type of stuff, you don't have to sign it, but just have your name down there. That works as well. A big thing, and this is something you need to do multiple times throughout your writing process, is check grammar, check spelling, check sentence structure, listen to how it sounds, read it out loud, and then have other people read it as well. Obviously, if you're writing the letter, you know what it's supposed to say, and as you read it, you're gonna think what it's supposed to say, not necessarily what you type. So make sure you have other people read over your cover letter multiple times. Don't just read through it once and assume that you're perfect. Go through and take the time to really make sure that you are getting the right information out there in a way that isn't going to hurt your possibilities because you spelled things wrong, because your sentences don't sound right. Make sure you're taking the time to go through and make sure sounds and flows okay. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about references for a second. References don't go on your cover letter. In fact, they really don't go on your resume either. They are a separate document that you turn in when you are asked for that. Some applications ask for references from the very beginning, like they want it submitted with your resume, with your cover letter. Some businesses don't even ask for references, or they might wait till after the interview and say, hey, please provide me with a reference or two so we can call them and just check on things. For your references, you want to use current or previous supervisors. That's your first choice. Now, granted, not everybody has that. Some people are just getting their first job, so you don't have past supervisors. There are other options as well. Coaches work, teachers work. Uh, as long as they know that they are being asked of that, most people will do that if they have seen you in some way perform. Whether, once again, if it's coaches, they've seen you work as a team. If it's teachers, they've seen your learning and study habits. But past supervisors are the best. Past coworkers can also work. It's not a bad decision to have a past coworker because they've seen you in a professional setting, but it really kind of depends on your experience and who you trust and kind of your background. One thing you do want to avoid is personal references as your references. Now, there are some jobs that ask for three professional references and two personal ones. Then, yeah, you want to do personal ones, friends, that type of stuff. But you don't want those to be your regular references because, one, your friends are always going to say good things and they don't really have an experience of seeing you in a professional setting. So that's not always the best. And for those who are younger, your friends may not be trustworthy enough to be a reference yet. As they get older, sure, but not necessarily when they're 18, 19 years old. Now, granted, there's a lot of 18, 19-year-olds that if they were listed as a reference, they would do great. They know how to answer the questions and talk through things, but not everybody is like that. Don't use family though. And this is tough. I live in North Dakota, and I have a lot of students that I worked with who maybe worked on like their parents' ranch or their uncle's ranch, and that was their main job that they had for years. That is tough because it's still family, and you can still use it on your resume. You can still say, "Hey, I worked at this place for so many years." But your references, I would try and choose someone outside your family because it just doesn't look good if your family is your references. It doesn't help you. Do make sure that everyone you're using as a reference has given you permission to do that. So ask them, talk to them, tell them what job you're applying for so they know how to answer questions. I mean, if you're applying for a job working with kids, and they don't realize that and they think that you're applying for something else that's very different, their answers may not be beneficial for you. They might come out the wrong way. So tell them what you're applying for. It is something that will help you and it will help them as well as they answer questions. But really, guys, when it comes to the cover letter and references, there's a lot of things you can do. Cover letters, if you're looking for a template, you can go on to Google and just search cover letter templates. There's tons. If you have Microsoft Word, there's tons of templates there. Don't get too colorful with your cover letters. I mean, having little colors in there, like kind of a background, but you don't want too much. Unless you're a graphic design or something of that type of nature of a job or career, your cover letter and your resume are going to be pretty black and white, pretty plain, pretty kind of boring. And that's okay because a lot of HR people, they don't want to see design stuff unless you're going to be a designer. They want to see information, easy to read, and get through it. So, that's my recommendation for you guys. If you do have questions, feel free to leave comments down below. I'll try and get to those as I go along. I always get notifications when a comment comes in. So leave a comment, leave a question down below and let me know. But please like, subscribe. I got a lot more videos coming out. They're going to be talking about just what it means to be an adult and learn things that just weren't taught in school. So, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time. Until next time, this is Adulting 101, and we'll talk to you guys later.